The biggest change is we had to adjust to the IEPs because if the state required us to do a contingency plan, and that is if we have to, the whole school swings virtual, then we had, they developed a new plan for us to cover so we could shorten the IEP because we can't cover everything like that. So we had to draw up contingency plans and hold conferences, and then if they went virtual, we had to adjust their IEPs. So that took a lot of training. It didn't seem like it, but you got a sample, and so then you had to go from your sample and then getting it out to them and seeing them, of course, adapting instruction and trying to get ready for all that. There's a lot of added pressure for them. And then just thinking about our kids that have health issues, that was a big change. You know, we've always done a great job, our custodial staff has always done a great job, but just thinking we're going to have to do a little more than what we did. And so thinking about those kids with health issues, how are we going to keep them safe if they come? How are we going to make sure that we sanitize and make sure everybody's in at their right time?
This spring was definitely more of a challenge than the fall has been. I mean, over the summer, we did trainings about technology. You know, we have a technology coordinator, Patty Kitts, and this is how you use all these tools, and it was great. But we didn't have that in the spring because it happened so instantly that we kind of had to learn as we went. So the fall has definitely been better because of the training and the resources that they've been able to provide us with. From March to now, I mean, world's different. I spent several weeks, the first couple weeks of school, teaching them, this is how you create a document. This is how you sign on to your class. I mean, the first week we just learned how to get into that Google meeting for each class. I mean, and my kids are intellectually higher functioning. So when you're thinking about these lower functioning kids, it took a lot of instruction just to teach them to access their education. Now we're in the point where we're starting to be able to actually teach because we spent so long helping them figure out how to even get on there and do things. Yeah. And it's been, but you also, and this is with not just special ed kids, but kids in society now, they can do so much with technology that there are some, especially I've noticed with some of the autistic kids, they're thriving on these academics virtually because their social skills aren't great, you know, going back and forth with us, but they can get on a screen and they can show you things that they know that you didn't realize they knew. I mean, putting it out there. So, I mean, it's, you know, there are some really positive success stories out there too with this virtual where we're seeing things that we never saw before because we have these new resources. So
it's really been an eye-opening and a learning experience. Strengths and weaknesses, you know.
Special education is not a particular category. It's a whole range. It's almost a spectrum of opportunities and learning differences. And so I think every parent, every child's probably had a different experience. But I think some commonalities that I see in my children, and also see in the higher ed environment as well, is that the impact of the trauma has probably been amplified in children with learning differences. And those will be kiddos that are identified with IEPs and 504s. And so it has added that layer of stress that has made learning, which is normally a little more challenging, even more difficult. They're just not able to process all of the incoming information and the anxiety and the stress, and they're feeling it, not only what they're hearing and seeing, but also first person, but also from the family and the environment. And so in a lot of cases, it really did shut down or slow down their ability to absorb knowledge and learn and make progress, particularly in the spring. And we had a break over the summer somewhat, but then again in the fall, I think the anticipation was that things would be a bit more organized and that there would be a more planning and proactive anticipation of challenges, which may or may not have been the case, but it didn't materialize as I had hoped. So I think that the gap is unfortunately continuing to widen with children with learning differences in their ability to make progress. Both of the children elected to go virtual in the beginning for, I think, our family's safety, but for theirs. And unfortunately, because particularly Guy, who's 13, he has executive function challenges. There are deficits there. It's a skill deficit, and that's an organizational skill that he had and he doesn't have. And that's actually what virtual learning requires, is a high degree of self-discipline and organizational skill. And he lacks those two things because of his disability. So that would need to be accounted for in the educational environment, whether it's in person or virtual. The rules don't change. Still has to. We were getting up to 100 emails a day. At one point, I think I counted 50 or 60 came in one day alone, of just routine emails from the school system generated. Some were automatically generated, some were teacher generated, some were staff generated, but it was overwhelming for a 13-year-old who can't organize. And he's supposed to keep up with that, plus the online environment, and where the assignments would pop up would be different. How they would be delivered would be different from 1 hour to the next. When he was supposed to be on Zoom, we weren't really sure. I ended up with a matrix trying to figure out, I spent probably 6 hours one day trying to figure out when he needed to be online for what class. And I still got it wrong. And I have a PhD. I mean, I'm not the brightest bulb in the pack, but I do know a little bit about how to organize and organize information. And it was a challenge for me. So, and I don't have an executive functioning deficit at the moment. So I think that, and I don't think any one teacher was trying to do that at all. I think every one of them was trying to deliver a high quality learning experience, frankly. And they tried so hard, it was overwhelming to him, and he shut down. He just shut down. And he, even though there was help available, because everything else was so overwhelming, he did not feel able to reach out.